noticed since arriving in Vietnam. It seemed to me that the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese soldiers fought harder, tougher, and with more tenacity than our Vietnamese soldiers. From my perspective, the Vietnamese soldiers on our side did not seem to fight as hard. Personally, I did not feel we could count on them. I often wondered if we stopped paying them, would they keep fighting? To be fair, there were many U.S. soldiers who were not there to fight either. Many were draftees who were unlucky enough to be drafted. If they were offered a choice of a plane ticket home or to stay and fight, many would have been on the plane. Halfway through my tour, I realized we were not going to win. We were not going to win even though we were better equipped, had the best technology, overwhelming firepower, the highest pay, and well-trained men and women. I knew we were not going to win simply because our side, the South Vietnamese as well as the Americans, lacked a strong enough mission, a higher calling, a reason to fight. We had lost our hearts. At least, I had lost mine. I did not want to kill anymore. I was no longer a good Marine. My experience in Vietnam proved to me that the stronger mission wins. The same thing happens in business. A vow of poverty. Most of us know that men and women of religious faith have taken vows of poverty in support of their spiritual mission. When I was a little boy, my dad explained to me that his friend, a Catholic priest, had taken a vow of poverty. Asking him what that meant, he said, "He has dedicated his life to God and God's work. That means money is not to be a part of his life. He lives an austere life in the service of God." "What does austere mean?" I asked. Tiring of the 1,000 questions a child asks, my dad's answer was, "Never mind what austere means. You will find out later on." A number of years later, I found out what austere meant. Sitting in a classroom for new Marine Corps officers, the instructor explained to the class that throughout history, men and women of war have also taken vows of poverty. The instructor said, in the feudal times, many knights took a vow of poverty in order to be true to their calling. They did not want money or desire worldly goods to interfere with their dedication to God and King. Before joining the Marine Corps, I was a ship's officer on an oil tanker for Standard Oil of California. I was being paid over $4,000 a month, which was a lot of money in 1969. Even though I was draft exempt because I was sailing for the oil industry, a classification known as non-defense vital industry, both my dads encouraged me to serve my country in time of war. As a Marine Corps officer, my pay dropped to less than $300 a month. Sitting in that classroom, listening to the instructor, reminded us that throughout history, men and women of war took vows of poverty. I finally found my definition of the word austere, the definition my dad did not give me some years before. 3 kinds of income, 3 kinds of money. There are 3 kinds of income. 1. Ordinary income. 2. Portfolio income. 3. Passive income. My poor dad worked for ordinary income, the highest taxed income there is. My rich dad worked primarily for passive income, the lowest taxed income. These terms for the 3 types of income actually come from the Internal Revenue Service. The tax department taxes the 3 incomes at different rates. An entrepreneur has the opportunity to work for all 3 types of income and needs to know the differences because the different tax rates can make a huge difference to the bottom line. I mention these incomes now not to confuse you, but to distinguish them from the discussion on the 3 different types of money I am about to discuss. When we were in high school, Rich Dad taught his son and me that people work for 3 different types of money. They are 1. Competitive money, 2. Cooperative money, 3. Spiritual money. Competitive money. To explain competitive money, he said, we learn to compete early in life. We compete in school for grades, we compete in sports, and we compete for the person we love. At work, we learn to compete for jobs, for raises, for promotions, for recognition, and for survival. In business, companies compete for customers, market share, contracts, and good employees. Competition is survival of the fittest, dog eat dog. Most people work for competitive money. Cooperative money. To explain cooperative money, he said, in sports and in business, cooperation is known as teamwork. The richest, most powerful entrepreneurs have built the biggest businesses in the world via cooperation. They become more competitive due to the cooperation of their team. Most entrepreneurs of large businesses are great team leaders. Spiritual money. Explaining spiritual money was a little bit more difficult. He said, spiritual money is created by doing God's work that God wants done. It's work being done in response to a higher calling. Not understanding what Rich Dad meant, I asked him, you mean like forming a church? His reply was, there are entrepreneurs who do form churches, just as there are entrepreneurs who form charities. Both could be examples of working for spiritual money, but spiritual money is not restricted to simply a church or charity. For years, this category puzzled me, and I often had discussions with him on this subject. During one of these discussions, he said, most people go to work for money, nothing else. They do not care if it is competitive, cooperative, or spiritual. For many people, work and money are just a means to an end. If you paid them twice as much to not work, many would take your offer. You mean they would not work for free? I asked with a smirk. No, definitely not. If you did not pay most people, they would move on looking for another job. They may want to help you and your business, but they have bills to pay and families to feed. They need money, any kind of money. They would choose their job depending upon which one paid the most and had the best benefits. So, is spiritual money like loving your work and doing what you love? No, smiled Rich Dad. Doing what you love is not what I mean by spiritual money. So what is spiritual money? I asked. Is it working for free? No, that is not it either. It's not about working for free because spiritual money is not really about money. Spiritual money is not about money? If it is not about money, then what is it about? I asked. It's about doing a job not because you want to do it, but because it must be done, and you know deep down in your soul you're the one that is supposed to do it. How do you know you're supposed to do it? I asked. Because it disturbs you that no one else is doing it. You may say to yourself, why isn't someone doing something about this? Could it anger you? I asked. Oh, yes, said Rich Dad softly. It can also sadden you or even break your heart. It may seem like an injustice or a crime to you. It probably disturbs your sense of decency. It seems unfair, an injustice. Don't most people have these feelings about something in their life? I asked. Yes, but most people don't do anything about it. They go to work and say things such as, why doesn't the government do something about it? Or they write letters to the editor and complain. But they don't do anything about it, I added. Quietly, Rich Dad said, in most cases, no. They may talk about it, they may complain about it, but they do little about it. After all, they are too busy at their job, earning enough money to pay the rent and saving enough money to take the kids to Disneyland. What would happen if they did do something about it? I asked. What might happen? If they were truly committed to solving the problem, I would say that the invisible forces of this universe, of God, might come to their support. Magic might happen in their lives. This is when spiritual money comes into play, but it is more than money. People you never met before come to join forces with you, not for the money, but for the mission. Why do they join you? I asked. Because they are on the same mission. That was about all I could handle that day. I had a test the next day, and my mission at the time was to get out of high school. Giving your gift. About a year went by, and once again I brought up the subject of spiritual money. If I simply work on a problem I know needs to be worked on, will that bring in the invisible forces, the spiritual money? Rich Dad laughed and said, maybe and maybe not. I'm not the one who makes those decisions. I will say this. One of the keys to attracting the invisible magical forces is to be dedicated to giving your gift. What? I responded with a jolt. Giving my gift? What do you mean by a gift? A special God-given talent, Rich Dad replied. Something you are the best at. A talent God gave especially to you. And what would that be? I asked. There is nothing I know of that I am the best at. Well, you have to find it. Does everybody have one? I'd like to think so, smiled Rich Dad. If everyone has a gift, why are so many people below average? I asked. Rich Dad roared with laughter at that question. Finally composing himself, he said, because finding your gift, developing your gift, and giving your gift is very hard work. Most people do not want to work that hard. Now I was puzzled. It seemed to me that if God had given us